Great. Good evening, everyone. My name is Lois Harder, and it is my distinct honor to welcome you this evening in my role as principal of the Peter Lougheed Leadership College. You see, I just slid right into those acronyms. This is the problem with all of these years at the University of Alberta. So, my pleasure to welcome you to this last installment of the Lougheed College Lectures. Thank you so much for joining us. As we begin, I would like to respectfully acknowledge that we are situated on Treaty 6 territory, traditional lands of First Nations and Métis people. Territorial acknowledgements invite us to consider what it means to be treaty people and to pursue good relations. This is a crucial obligation for all of us, particularly as we think about and practice leadership in a context of truth and reconciliation. For those of you who are new to the lecture series and to the PLLC, let me provide a bit of background. The Peter Lougheed Leadership College was established in 2015 and aims to equip University of Alberta students, staff, faculty, and the broader community with opportunities to acquire skills, encounter knowledge, and engage in dynamic conversations about leadership. Our undergraduate program and new graduate programming will equip students with the skills they need to lead in interdisciplinary contexts and prepare them to engage with diverse people and ideas, educating them to be outstanding leaders for the future. For those of you who have attended previous lectures, you will know that this series is generally part of a course in our undergraduate program. Tonight, however, we are departing from that format, and the lecture is a standalone event, so that'll allow us a little bit more time for questions after Alvin Law's talk. And we'll be using a similar kind of format in the coming year as well, and we're also hoping to organize some discussion sections after the lectures so people can really get engaged in the weighty matters of leadership. So, the purpose of the lecture series is to expose students and community members to provocative research and big ideas that will challenge their thinking and inspire positive action. And we are extremely grateful to Syncrude Canada for the generous donation that makes this series possible. Now, a little bit more business before I formally introduce our speaker this evening. We do have a few announcements. First of all, we'd like to thank everyone who donated to the campus food bank this evening. And if you did not come with a non-perishable food item, we invite you to donate online. During this address tonight, we ask that you do not take any audio or video recordings. This lecture will be recorded and available to the public on our website. And tonight's lecture will run until 7:30. We'll start with a formal-ish presentation. We'll see how formal from our guest speaker, followed by question and answer. So I would now like to introduce tonight's speaker, Mr. Alvin Law. Alvin has asked that I begin his introduction with a question. What would your own personal introduction say? For speakers, it's an everyday event, and for Alvin, it is an everyday challenge. In fact, he rather dislikes introductions because he believes they tend to be an exercise in ego. Yet, they also offer an opportunity to build credibility. So, here we go, short and sweet, or not so short, because I've already rambled on for some time. Alvin has spent 36 years on stage, encouraging people to strive for their best, no matter what the circumstances of their lives give them. He has spoken on 5 continents and is a member of the Canadian Professional Speakers Hall of Fame. He has a best-selling book, Alvin's Laws of Life, and his list of awards and achievements is extensive. His greatest point of pride rests in the fact that since 1976, he has played a direct role in raising over $200 million for charity. Tonight, his talk is entitled, "What's Your Label?" Welcome, Alvin Law.
Thank you very much. Start that this is not going to be a formal lecture. okay, because that's not what I do. So you can relax. I can also tell you that I am going to do most of the talking. We will save the questions until the end. I'm not going to do any audience participation. You're not going to have to answer questions. You're not going to have to change spots and sit with someone you've never met before. And you're not going to have to do the trust exercise. Do you know what that is? It's when someone comes to the stage and they fall back and the speaker catches them. That's not going to happen tonight, just so you're comfortable knowing that. Actually, to be quite honest with you, I am going to start out with something that is extremely unusual if you're you, but not at all unusual if you're me. But I can guarantee you that most presentations do not start out with a little musical solo. And I want to warn you, it's going to be loud, and I am going to play this drum, and I'm going to play it for about 15 seconds, and then when I'm done, I'm going to get into my material. But this is really how I start most of my programs. So this will dispense with the formality right off the very beginning. You ready for this? Here we go. There you go. You can clap for that if you like. Thank you. So what was that all about? I'll tell you in a little while, okay? But I want to go into my history for a little bit. I want to go to 1977. The Yorkton Regional High School in Yorkton, Saskatchewan. Anybody know where Yorkton is? Oh, so there's a lot. See, I knew there'd be Saskatchewan folks here tonight. I know why. Nothing else to do. Okay, so Yorkton, for those of you that don't know, is a farming community in the east central part of Saskatchewan where I grew up. And in 1977, I was a senior at the Yorkton Regional High School. Actually, I do have a question for you. You don't have to answer, just curious. Do you remember your high school guidance counselor? Now, for those of you that aren't in high school yet, because I see they allowed some really short people to sneak in, but those of you that are old enough, do you remember yours? Yeah? Did you have one? Because believe it or not everybody has a guidance counselor, career counselor, you know, one of those people. Did you even have a little 15-minute block of time somewhere in your teenage years to chart the entire course of the rest of your life? Did you have one of those? Because that's what this, actually, here's a really good question. I do want a show of hands on this one. Any of you that had a guidance counselor that had that little 15-minute block of time, are you doing what your guidance counselor recommended? Show of hands. 1, 2, 2. 2 in an entire room. This is not an indictment on guidance counselors, okay, just so you know. I actually did this story in front of 1,500 guidance counselors at the Canadian Association of Guidance Counselors convention in Toronto, and out of 1,500 guidance counselors, this is funny, 6 of them put up their hand. So am I trying to slag these folks? No, absolutely not. I just find it fascinating. My guidance counselor was Ken Sherwin. He was a fine and still is an incredible human being. But I didn't really know the guy. That was good, because he was also the vice principal of discipline. So I was one of those goody two-shoes kids that never got in trouble, right? And I didn't know Mr. Sherwin, but I had to go to that meeting. And I sat in front of his desk as a confident 17-year-old because I had a plan. And Mr. Sherwin was not going to be part of that silliness. So when Mr. Sherwin said, "Mr. Law, what are you going to do when you graduate? I think I know the answer." I said, "I'm going to be a rock star." Makes sense, doesn't it? You should see me play the whole set. That was my plan. And nobody was going to deter me from my dream. Do you have one of those? Don't answer this one either. But how many of you, if you look back on your life when you were young, believed that you were going to be somebody different than you are today? Believed that you were going to be huge and gigantic and maybe even a rock star? I'm just curious. But I had to sit in that meeting. And I had to listen to Mr. Sherwin because that was his job. So there I sat, and he said, "Mr. Law, that's all very well and good. And you are incredibly talented and inspirational. And, you know, we know this, Mr. Law, but the world out there is not Yorkton, Saskatchewan. I think you need a backup plan. I think you need to consider something that would not be about music, or at least some kind of hybrid of that. And I said, but I love music. I wanted to be into music. I want to do something. He goes, okay, think of outside the box. He even said that back in 1977. So I literally said, how about dentistry? So I'm a foot user. Do you understand how silly that is? Can you imagine? Open wider. I don't think so. So Mr. Sherwin looked at me and said, are you trying to be funny? I went, trying. And Mr. Sherwin, you had to look at his face, and it was like, Mr. Law, if anybody understands this, you know that life isn't funny. Okay. But it was actually a brilliant moment. It was a brilliant moment. Because Mr. Sherwin looked at me and said, I think you should be a broadcaster. I'd never once thought of that, like, ever, okay? Not even ever. And I said, like on television? Remember, this was 1977. He says, you're kind of ugly for television. But you could be in radio. Radio. How do I do that? You can go to school for that. No, you can't. Yes, you can. So off I went to Mount Royal College, now Mount Royal University in Calgary, graduated in 1980, got a job. 9 days after graduating my college program, I was a full-time DJ at FM 92, the Rock of Regina. That was my job. I was an FM DJ at a rock station. It was awesome. I loved that job. I was so good at it that everybody started recognizing me. So I became an unwilling celebrity. I really didn't think I was going to be famous, but that's what happened. So therefore, I was popular. And on another fateful occasion, I was given an opportunity to speak to my first ever group of school students. It was a junior high, and it was career day. And the boss made me go. But it was pretty fun. I wore my Rock 92 jacket, took the Rock 92 van, handed out Rock 92 stickers, got into kind of a music room, lecture theater type place in front of about 120 7th grade students, and I had never done this. So I went, okay, so if you have any questions? Actually, it was more like, if you have any questions, because that was my voice then. I also looked very different in those days, didn't we all? I was about 30 pounds lighter, and I had this gigantic head of hair. I have no idea what that was all about. It's really quite funny, because you know, I don't have any hair anymore, and I'm okay with that. Actually, do you remember when having no hair in a guy was like embarrassing? And now it's everywhere? Fascinating how things change. I'll talk about that later. But the fact is, I didn't need big hair, but I was trying to be cool. So I was in front of those kids, and I was excited. I didn't know what to do in this question and answer thing, but I said, any questions, just put up. Every single student in that room raised their hand. So how do you pick? I acknowledged the kid in the front row because I can't point. He stood up and said, how do you go to the bathroom? Okay, that wasn't a broadcasting question. That was a really good question. I dare you to get it out of your head for the next 45 minutes. Why do I bring that up? Because I have a dilemma. I've been on the road as a professional speaker for 38 years. I said 36 in the introduction because the first 2 years I wouldn't call myself a professional. But I've been doing this since 1981, which was the International Year of Disabled Persons. But I can't lie, I thought it would just be a one-year program. I had no plan to still be doing this in 2019. Now, I don't know how that sounds to you, but I want you to understand from me tonight, I'm not an academic. I have great regard for our academic institutions, and I have nothing but respect for Peter Lougheed. Politics aside, he was one of the greatest leaders that Alberta and Canada ever had. And that's the trouble, is politics is hard to put aside. I know where lots of people are tonight that were going to come. They're probably watching television, seeing our leaders have a debate. Actually, it's more like a you-know-what contest. But the fact of the matter is, I'm not political either. Never have been. That's probably one of the things I want to talk to you about is most important that you understand is this is very personal tonight. I don't like talking about myself. I don't like speaking about going to the bathroom or getting dressed or how I function. But it is a natural human curiosity when people see me for the first time because they really don't know how to feel. And as to leadership, well, I do know leadership because I've been talking about it for so long. So I'm just give you my own spin. And it's probably going to sound pretty familiar. Because quite frankly, I don't know if there's a lot of new stuff about leadership. I think it's pretty simple, frankly. I mean, think about it, ladies and gentlemen. I get paid to travel the world saying things like, it's better to have a positive attitude than a negative one. Duh. It's not about that. In my opinion, leadership, and you saw this in the promotional material, leadership is taught. I don't believe leaders are born. I believe we grow them. And leadership has taken a hit. It feels like our leaders are not the way they used to be for some of us, doesn't it? But the fact is, that is part of change. It's inevitable. And thank God it does happen. Let me go into the obvious for just a moment, if you don't mind. Actually, can you imagine? Can you imagine how many times I've heard this question? What happened to you? Can you imagine how long ago I got tired of answering that? But it follows me everywhere. And I used to dislike it because it was kind of, obviously a good question, but it's not something I enjoyed talking about because it was a dark history. And I had to take some time in my life and grow a little bit to even understand how I felt about it. It's interesting, the lecture is called, What's Your Label? What is your label? Do you have one? Because everybody's got one, We sometimes are overt about it. We are sometimes quiet about it. We often use it as an ethnic identifier, yes? We are using it now more and more as a sexual gender identifier. And a lot of the changes that are happening in our world, not everyone is comfortable with. But that's all part of this change I'm talking about. But if I said the word thalidomide, what would that do in your head? Because for some of you, you would have a very clear picture of what that was. And for some of you, you have no idea what I just said. Thalidomide. It was a morning sickness medication that deformed over 20,000 babies in a 4-year period between 1958 and 1962. I hope you're ready for what I'm going to say next, because not a lot of speakers will say this in a lecture, especially motivational speakers. I wish I could do those air quotes, huh? Did you know that thalidomide was invented at Auschwitz? Wonder if you knew that. That's one of those secrets about thalidomide that doesn't really get out in the public discourse. We remember the images of the limbs, huh? Shortened limbs, maybe all 4 limbs were gone, maybe just a finger or 2 missing, claw-like hands, claw-like feet. My arms didn't grow at all, yet my feet and legs are perfectly healthy. And I'm not suggesting it was a good thing. That's not what I'm saying. But it's funny when I think about it, and when I learned about the connection with the death camps, it was actually invented to take care of the people who were struggling and challenging those authorities who were about to put these people to death. You're not smiling. You shouldn't be. But I find it very interesting on a personal note what that means. Do you know what's interesting about thalidomide? It was the first pharmaceutical product that got in trouble in history. And in fact, it was one of the reasons why we have so many regulations now, not only in pharmacy, but in health and safety. You might not notice, but when you look around the room down here and you see that we have a professional sound and AV crew, little things like taping down wires, making sure there's no trip hazards, making sure that everything is safely and accessible in this building. That's new regulations that were born out of the thalidomide era. Did you know that? Because we didn't have any rules. You could just make a drug and give it to people, and that's why over 20,000 babies were deformed. Did you also know that 250,000 babies died because of thalidomide? So, let's try a different approach for just a second, okay? I'm not making stuff up. This is how I operate, all right? 1996, I am doing a telethon in Vancouver, British Columbia. How many people from Saskatchewan remember good old Telemiracle, huh? Ring those phones. Which way are we going? You have no idea what we're talking about, do you? Anybody from Alberta remember the old ACT telethon that used to happen up at the hotel north of here? I used to do with Blake Emmons. Remember Blake Emmons from Hee Haw? All those old people that would come to the show. That's how many telethon years I've been doing, since 1976. And the telethon in Vancouver is for Variety Club. And Variety Club's main objective is to help handicapped children. So as you can tell, I have a bit of a talent. I started using that musical talent to show off on telethons, but also my broadcasting abilities to ask for money. That's why that introduction said $200 million. That's not bragging, that's a fact. I'm proud of that. That's because I've been part of these organizations. But I'm also part of the education. I think it's really important to make it more aware, our lives, people with disability. So I'm doing the telethon in 1996 or so. We're on the air, and we have a sad story. There's a little girl who's got 5 tumors on her spine, and her prognosis is not good. She has epilepsy too. So at the end of the little bit, which was going to be about 5 minutes long on live television, Variety, the organization, was going to, through us on TV, present this little girl with a helper dog. And this is really at the infancy of service dogs, okay? So you need to know how big a deal this was. It was an epileptic seizure service dog. Oh my God, it was cute too. It's going to be a great television moment. I don't know how many of you right now are going, are you kidding me? You know how distasteful this is? Hang in there with me, okay? So we're on television, and we got this little girl with tumors, and we got our little brother, bigger brother, sorry, her mom and her dad, and it's like one of those really awkward moments. We're talking about what this is all about, why they're there. And I asked the mom, you glad to be here? She goes, I hate being here. I said, why? Oh, I hate television. I hate watching it. I hate being on it. So what are you doing here? Well, I didn't want to be here either because the reason we're here is what I'm talking about. We didn't plan on having a sick child. We didn't plan on needing financial assistance. Oh, you're getting help from Variety? Yeah, we are. Really? I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about this, Mr. Law, but now that you asked the question, I'm going to say it. Variety is helping with our daughter's tumors. She's on an experimental medication that costs $20,000 a month. And we don't know if it's going to help her or not. But all we have left is faith. Oh, and Mr. Law, you might find this kind of fascinating. The name of the drug is called thalidomide. Today, Janice is 29 years old. She's married, she still has illnesses, and she's on Variety dog number 5. I just saw her in February. Every time she sees me, she remembers that interview, and here's what she said. Every time. Thanks for the dignity. See, disability and sad stories don't often accompany dignity. The food bank, one of the major contributors, not only tonight, but to this organization, huge. Wouldn't it be nice if we didn't need a food bank? See, these are the things that, to me, attitude reflect. And when I talk about this, as you can tell, I talk about a lot of things. It really goes back to what I see in my own world, my own life story that causes me the greatest amount of reflection. How could I possibly explain this to you any better than this story? I have to tell you a funny one first. I wish I could stick around and like hang out with you tonight, but I got kind of a schedule conflict. I drove up from Calgary today. I spoke at a junior high school conference this morning, and I'm off to Lloydminster tonight to hotel it and then go to Cut Knife, Saskatchewan tomorrow for a special assembly. Ready? To honor the 1-year anniversary of the Humboldt bus crash. That's Saturday. Saturday is a year since those people died in that horrific crash. It's terrible. But yet a school is having an assembly to honor those people in typical Saskatchewan manner, and they're going to celebrate the good news, whatever that's going to look like. I don't even know what it looks like. How can you pull good news out of anything that's terrible like that? I don't know. That's the trouble with our society. And that was the trouble with my own take on things. And I'm telling you this not to complain, but I find it fascinating because, you know, when I talk to young people, which I'm going to do tomorrow, high school students, I'm going to tell them this. I hated being a teenager. I was terrible at it because it was all about me, hey? Me, 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 me. And really, it hasn't changed much, has it, young people? We make it seem like you're the most important thing on planet Earth, and maybe you are, although there's 7 billion of us, so I'm not sure who gets the trophy. Anyway, I think it's interesting as well that young people struggle with resiliency. It's the new one, huh? They don't have any resiliency skills. I don't know about that. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. All I know is resiliency doesn't come from a smooth life. Resiliency is learned by overcoming obstacles, not by removing them. That was a big lesson for me because I didn't do teenage life very well, okay? And it was silly little shallow things, right? Like the young people love this story. Like when I got to be old enough to like dating, okay? You know that age where you start kind of looking at, hi, hi. And I was heterosexual, so I wanted to have a girlfriend. What do you do when you get a girlfriend? You got to hold her hand. That didn't go very well either, so I never dated. And I started taking it awful personal, huh? Started thinking maybe it's because I'm ugly. Maybe it's because I'm not masculine. Maybe it's because nobody wants to be with a guy that looks like he's going to need help for the rest of his life. Whatever it was, it went away. Because that's what life can do for you sometimes. Mine, this was a big day. Sorry, I'm going to be a cheap speaker here for a second. August 23rd, 1985, I had a life-changing experience because that is the day that my son Vance was born. So that's what I mean about cheap speaker. Whenever speakers want to get emotional, they talk about their babies or their grandchildren or their, in this case, I'm going to talk about parents too. Double whammy. But I'll never forget that day. Oh my God, what a day. I hope you don't mind me being really honest and blunt with you tonight. And some of it's just meant to be fun. So this is one of those fun ones. I remember being in the operating room in Regina, Saskatchewan, and I'm watching the birthing process. And my mind flashes back to junior high school in Yorkton, Saskatchewan. Health nurse day. When the health nurse came into the school and stood in front of us, and we're all in 7th grade, sitting in our desks, you know, really uncomfortable, because it's talk about babies day. Oh, I don't want to talk about this, I don't want to talk about this. And I just don't even want to think about it at all. I don't want to look up even. And I remember the nurse, I'm not trying to make fun of her, but I remember she said, childbirth is the most beautiful shared human experience. And I'm in the operating room watching my kid being born going, that was a big lie. There's no sharing going on here. Guys go, breathe, breathe. What's that? That's nothing. When babies are born, they're beautiful. No, they're not. No, are they? They're not. They're covered in goo. It's disgusting, isn't it really? I mean, the nurse is holding him up. He's dripping on the floor. And then she says to me, Mr. Law, this is typically where the dads cut the umbilical cord. And I went, they don't really let me play with scissors. So the nurse cut the cord. They tied that little knot. I don't know how they do that. They put him in a bath. They bathed off all the goo. They put him in a blue blanket. Code for boy. Brought him over and put him here. He fit here. He doesn't fit here anymore. Do I look old enough to have a 33-year-old kid? I mean, seriously. And by the way, if you're wondering, he's fine. He's not great. He's fine. Do you know why he's fine? Because he is one of the people in the province of Alberta that is an engineer. And what is he doing today? Working 12-hour shifts, usually graveyard, putting furniture together at a furniture supply company called DIRT, which stands for Do It Right this time in Calgary. He's doing a minimum wage job with an engineering degree because Barack Obama decided not to send a pipeline down through Nebraska. Told you I'm not going to talk about politics tonight, but it's fascinating, isn't it? How ideas that aren't always accurate get an awful lot of attention because they get attention. You know, it's funny, I just spent a week in California a month ago. Fascinating. When you really start talking to people in Los Angeles what they think of Alberta, they hate us. And it's not because of the Calgary Flames. Sorry, I had to bring that up. The reality is there's so much misinformation, isn't there? That's not leadership. Leadership is very, very difficult to explain when it comes to telling the truth. Doesn't it feel like that sometimes? Like, just tell us the truth. Well, yeah, except the truth has so many different truths now, doesn't it? That's the trouble. That's why I like to talk about the differences between thalidomide and what it meant. And for me, that day in Regina, Saskatchewan, this was not about just a brand new baby, although that was a huge part of it. This was about a recognition. You see, in my entire lifetime, I'd never once ever considered how my mom and dad must have felt the first time they held me. They called the babies the Thalidomide Victims. That was our label. I disagree. I think the moms were the victims because the moms were given the medication. They trusted the doctors. They had faith in their leadership. And yet these drugs deformed their children. They didn't want that, clearly. But here's the reason I'm telling you. My mom was 55 years old the first time she held me, and my dad was 53, and I was homeless. True, not melodrama. Now, was I homeless? Did I live in a homeless relationship with my family? No, this was Yorkton, Saskatchewan. You'd be nuts to be homeless there. It's 40 below for 7 months out of the year, trust me. Were my parents gone? Did they die? No, they were fine. But I had no home when I was 5 days old, and again, not looking for sympathies. These are simple facts. That's how this story of yours, you're going to hear tonight, began. But you see, it seems like it turned out okay, doesn't it? But that had very little to do with me, and everything to do with Hilda Law and Jack Law. See, they had a foster home in Yorkton, Saskatchewan. Bit of an odd thing to have in a small town in 1960, but that's what they did. Why? Mom's answer was they had a 950 square foot house with 2 empty bedrooms, and somehow that seemed wrong. Really? I'm not trying to brag here, okay? My wife and I live in a beautiful home in Calgary, 3,500 square feet, right? 5 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms. And by the way, when my son moved out when he was 18, happiest day of our lives. I'm kidding, but you know, really, it's funny, isn't it? We have a lot of kids living in their parents' basements now, and that's for economy, I guess. Although I do worry sometimes that that false economy is a bit of a false reality. I digress. You know, it's funny to me when I think about my kid. He gets this question a lot. How does it feel having a dad without arms? I love his answer. It's not like I got to pick. Exactly. Isn't it fascinating? Do you ever think about this? I think about it all the time. We're used to a lot more than now. How do we get the life we get? Right? How do some people get born in a beautiful, rich, wealthy neighborhood, and other people are really homeless? How does that happen? I don't know. All I know is it's amazing what people's life's journeys are really like. You've all got one, don't you? You've all got a journey. You've got a life story. You're saying, well, you know, I'm not lecturing about it. I know. You should check this out. It's pretty cool. Not home a lot, but, you know, it's not having a real job. It's cool. But seriously, we've all got a story. And my story, when I talk about mom, is the really good example. See, when I was given up by my birth family because they were counseled to by the doctors and the medical experts who in 1960 believed that people with special needs had 0 quality of life. That was 1960. Remember that? We hid people. We stuck them in hospitals. It's crazy. So when Hilda Law took me home, it was a very kind gesture. But I want you to understand what that was really like. You don't know me, I don't think. Some of you do. Some of you recognize me. Some of you have seen me speak before. I've been around a little bit. I don't think I'm a big celebrity speaker. You know, that's okay. Although I'm famous in Saskatchewan. That's easy, by the way. Saskatchewan people, did you know that I got famous in 1961? Not when Telemiracle started, but when the Regina Leader-Post published a full spread article on yours truly, trying to connect the dots to thalidomide. And they couldn't because they weren't allowed. Because my mom and dad did not know why I had no arms, because they weren't allowed to know. Because this was 1960. So when the press called, Mom thought it would just be kind of fun. You know, have a reporter come in, tell a nice little story, put it in the paper, you know, tell her friends. If it was social media, you know, she'd Twitter it. But this was 1960. So Mom said, sure, come on down. So the reporter and the photographer came to our house, and the photographer took a picture of me It's creepy to look at. I still got it. It's in my scrapbook. I'm on the entire front cover of the Regina Leader Post, naked. They had the decency to cover my privates with a little cloth and put a black photographic bar across my eyes so nobody would recognize who I was. Really? So then the reporter, he sits on our couch and he's looking at me and he's kind of going like this. Mom finally goes, "Are you going to ask a question or something?" And the reporter said, "I just can't keep my eyes off him." And Mom went, "I know, he's adorable, isn't he?" Would you have thought of adorable? I mean, I'm not an ugly man, I guess, but really, I don't see that. I don't see that in people's first impression of me. You know that expression, first impressions are everything? I categorically disagree, okay? Because everybody sees me and they go, "Oh my God, what happened to you?" But then they see me doing something with my feet, and that very quickly changes the moment. Okay, my favorite example, it's just one of my favorite examples, I get a kick out of this, is driving, okay? So I drove up today from Calgary. I'm going to drive to Lougheed. I'm going to drive to Cutnap. I'm going to drive home tomorrow night. I love to drive, and I love driving. I can't lie about this, okay? Somebody once said money can't buy happiness. Want to bet? I'm driving my wife's 2018 Audi. Nice car. Hope I don't get a speeding ticket, or otherwise I'm in trouble. And I just steer with my right foot on the wheel, my left foot on the gas. All I need is automatic transmission. I can drive any car. In fact, most of the time, I rent cars. Can you imagine the look you get when you walk up to the rental counter at any given airport in the world and you hand them your driver's license with your toes and you wait to take your keys? It's a great look. Drive-throughs. Those are hilarious. Can you get up to the window of a drive-thru? That'll be $5. Here. Guy said to me one day, "It's funnier if you're in the car behind you." Right, because all you see is the foot going out the window, a couple of feet grabbing my drink, away I go. Do you know one of the things that I didn't have that I wish I would have had when I was a teenager, when I look back on all this? A sense of humor. Do you feel sometimes like leadership has lost its humor? People have lost their sense of humor? Now, I'm not suggesting we should be back telling those disgusting, jokes that were misogynistic and distasteful and, mean-spirited and full of dirty language. The good old days, those people call it. Yeah, you know what? We needed to fix that. But why I mention it is because my mom had a great sense of humor. So she didn't get all bogged down in blaming a drug company for her child's disability, which took the energy of so many of the moms, and still does to this day for people that are battling the status quo, huh? People that are dedicated to righting a wrong. Good for you. I'm not much of an activist anymore. I was in my early 20s. Tends to be pretty typical. A lot of early 20-somethings want to change the world, right? And then you get to be 50 and you go, okay, maybe not. Right? Do you ever feel like that? Like you spent your whole life trying to fix something? The trouble is, it's pretty hard to gauge what you've done when you're following that time frame along with your life, isn't it? I'm here to remind you that we've come light years in our society. I know we have, because I remember what it was like. My mom reminded me. It's funny. So the reporter said to my mom, "Hey, are you actually being upbeat about this child?" "Yeah." "Why would you do that?" "Oh, because he's going to be remarkable." "How do you know that?" "Instinct." "Sorry, I'm a reporter. I need more than that." "Okay, he's starting to use his toes for fingers and his feet for hands." "How'd you teach him that?" "He taught us." "He's a baby." "Baby teaches lots. You just have to pay attention." I walked in his room one morning. He was dangling his favorite teddy bear between his first and second toe by its left ear. "So what'd you do?" Porter said. "Mom said I stared. What do you think I did? Weirdest looking thing I'd ever seen in my entire life." So let me just take off my jacket. I want to show you what this looks like. I also want to get rid of the jacket. I don't know why we dress up. Do you ever wonder why we dress up? Why we wear ties, gentlemen? Is that the stupidest idea ever? You know how long it takes me to put on a tie? Half an hour. I used to tuck my shirts into my pants with a drumstick in my teeth, wear jackets so I could make a good first impression. I don't even have shoulders. I put on my jacket in Calgary, it ends up in Fort Macleod. Do you understand what I'm getting at? We worry so much about our exterior and how we position ourselves and what we look like and how we do our hair and what we wear and what brand our shoes are. All these things that, quite frankly, I don't think are really all that important. Are they? Isn't content of character more important? And doesn't content of character come from struggle? Isn't that what Michelle Obama said in her book? What a great book. What a great leader. There's a good example, huh? But where did that come from? Dr. King. Martin Luther King was one of my heroes because he struggled and he challenged and he fought and he sacrificed his whole life because he believed in something that today we look at and go, duh, don't we? Unless you're somebody who can't get away from that past. See, to me, that's the part that scares me the most about the thalidomiders I've met. They're stuck. But they're stuck because they didn't get the lottery like I did. They did not end up with a mother like I did. They did not get the benefit of what I was given by my mom's attitude. I'm going to play the piano here for you in a second, but I want to share with you what my mom really, really did. She taught me to use my feet. I learned to use them, and I can take care of myself and all those little things. You can ask us later if you want. But I think the biggest thing she did, and why I know it's different now, is in 1966, I was ready for my education. There was a school right across the street from our house in Yorkton, St. Alphonsus Elementary. Still there. I couldn't wait to go, huh? Do you remember? If you can remember back to your early days, for those of you that are really old, remember? Schools were different, weren't they? Do you remember your first day in like grade 1? We didn't even have kindergarten when I was young, right? Oh my God, I was so excited. Mom and Dad came with me. Can I just describe them for you for a bit? I'm sorry, I have to use old measurements. I'm not very good with this one. My dad was like 6 feet 3 inches tall, okay? Weighed 235 pounds. He was a big guy. He was a service manager for International Harvester Trucks and Tractors in Yorkton. He was an ex-professional heavyweight boxer. And he was an immigrant to Canada from Britain. That was pretty easy. Get on a boat, and there you go. And they even speak the language. It wasn't that good for him. But he came over when he was 16 years old on his own. My mom was 5'2", weighed about 150 pounds most of her life. Solid, my mom. She was born in Oklahoma. And when she was 3 years old, wagon trained to a place called Burgess, Saskatchewan, where her family homesteaded. Mom and Dad got married in 1930. Bad timing, huh? Had John in 1932. Had Terry in 1938. My brother Terry lives in Sherwood Park. Thank God he's not in town right now, otherwise I'd be in the bad list for not staying overnight with him tonight. What an incredible family I have that I never even knew. They were gone. That's the empty bedrooms, remember? But I mention this only because I find this completely fascinating when I think about how much this story would impact my life. Mom and Dad were obviously remarkable people, but they weren't advocates either. They weren't trying to make any statements, but we went over to the school and we went to the principal's office. Oh, we stopped in the library first. I remember I had a donut. I don't know why I remember that. And then we sat in front of the principal, and he seemed like a pretty good leader, huh? He's looking at Mom, and he's looking at me, and he's kind of looking at Dad, and he's not sure what to do. He's just sitting there. And finally he says, I'm sorry, folks, but he can't come here. And my dad went, we live across the street. Well, no, Mr. Law, we know where you live. You're not strangers in this town. Got quite a story, actually, but the rules are he can't come here. And Mama, where is he supposed to go? He needs to go to school. Oh, he needs to go across town where the kids like him go. And Mom went, kids like who? The principal using a really old word. We got to get rid of this. Well, crippled kids like him, and he pointed at me. I love this. Mom looked at me, looked at the principal. He's not crippled. Principal looked at my mom like there was something wrong with her too. Mrs. Law, he's got no arms. What do you call that? Mom went, Alvin. Isn't that a good story? Obviously, I got an education. Went to high school, had a guidance counselor, went to Mount Royal. No, obviously is not the word. The principal simply looked at us and said, be that as it may, there's nothing I can do. That was a really weird moment. I heard my mom do this. I looked over and she was crying. I'd never seen my mom cry. And my dad is looking at my mom crying. Did I mention my dad was an ex-professional heavyweight boxing champ? Did I cover that? No, probably not. So he's looking at my mom, who's now crying, and then he looks at the man that made mom cry, and then he looks back at my mom and he says, Hilda, I think you need a moment here, dear. Why don't you go back to the library, take the boy, get another coffee, get him another donut. The principal and I, we're going to have a little chat now. No, I don't know what went on in there, but 20 minutes later, Dad comes out, big smile. Hey, kid, you're going to school here tomorrow. I was pretty sure my dad beat up the principal, but he didn't do that. Look, I know there's an obvious answer to the simple side of this question, but why is everybody seemingly so angry these days? Did you ever get that feeling? Like there's just so much anger? People protesting? You have a right to do that, of course you do. But I'm wondering what it actually does. Social activism says that by protesting and causing violence, you get the media to cover your story and therefore it gains front page exposure. And then your story gets awareness. Okay, I can understand that. But I can also understand the idea of working together to make things better. Of sitting down like cultured human beings. See, that to me is where we're at even right now as we speak tonight. I don't know what that debate was like. I hope it was good. But my gut tells me it probably was pretty disgusting because that's where our politics have gone. And if that's how we view leadership, I know why we're angry. I work in the United States a lot. I just want to mention one reference to their president, if I may. And I do this because this one really bugged me. Happened to be in Dallas, Texas when Mr. Trump was on his campaign swing before he became elected. Remember this? I was watching Fox News. It was just on. I have no idea because I don't watch Fox News, but it was on. And it just happened to coincide with the moment that Mr. Trump made fun of the reporter from the New York Times with cerebral palsy. Do you remember that? He made fun of a person with special needs. And now he's the president of one of the most powerful nations on planet Earth. And some people love that leadership style. Oh, I get anxious even thinking about what that actually means. So is that what I'm here to talk about tonight? No, I'm not. I'm just saying that's what we think leadership is. So I'm here to tell you that leadership may be the president or the prime minister or the premier, but I think leadership is a guy like Jack Law, who sat with a principal who had an obvious concern and a legitimate one. They'd never seen anybody like me. They'd never had a special needs kid in any classroom, in any school in Yorkton, Saskatchewan. How are you supposed to do anything with that? Well, my dad's words said it all. He leans in real quiet and he says, I didn't want him either. This was his mother's idea. We got this empty bedrooms and she brings in this armless child. What was that all about? But he kind of grows on you. You just got to give it a little time, And you got to realize, sir, yes, we do live across the street. And this is the school that he's been designated to go to. So if the rules say he can't come here, change them. So now we have mainstream inclusion with special needs kids all across planet Earth. How did that start? With Jack Law? No. But it definitely started with positive advocacy. Because if you're the one that has the special needs child, how are you feeling about this story? Yet in Ontario, their leadership is saying, let's cut 25% of the budget for people with autism. That's politics. That's not leadership. Oops. Chubby toes. I hate it when that happens. Okay, here we go for real. You can clap for that too if you like. Thanks. That's funny. You instantaneously clapped for the drum. You were kind of not sure on that one, huh? You're kind of going, we clap? Should we not clap? It wasn't really very good. Right? That's what you're thinking. I know how you did it, because you go, but you did it with your feet. Thank you. No, I get it. Thank you. See, I know. I wonder when you decided to come tonight if you thought it was all going to be just fun. All happy, positive stories. Yeah, I was thinking about that on the drive up. What do I do? Well, if I was just kind of doing a talk to some group that had brought me in a corporate level and they told me all the stuff they wanted me to talk about, I would have done that. So I'm feeling a little conflicted because I feel not pressure, that's not the word, conflicted, because this is an academic institution. And I believe the way that we grow as a society is by challenging academia, but also challenging the status quo. So that's part of why I've been a little bit negative and a little more aggressive than usual, because usually I don't like talking about this stuff at all. That's why I love stuff like that. That's fun, right? Sure is fun when I think about what it meant to me. When I was 9 years old in Yorkton and I wanted to be active. I was a very, very active child. And I realized sports was not going to be my thing, right? I tried it. I tried all kinds of, you're thinking soccer. By the way, when you grow up with a British father, it's not called soccer. Can we be clear on this? It's called football, all right? The CFL and the NFL, they need a different name because it's football. It's footy ball. I love football. I was really good at it too. If you play football or soccer, as you might identify better, I had the added advantage, right, of never getting the penalty for touching the ball with my hands. It was awesome. But I didn't want to play sports. Do you understand that? Some people just don't want to play sports, kind of like the Oilers. Sorry, that was a cheap shot. Hey, do you have any idea how hard it is to live in the shadow of the champion city? By the way, they took that sign off, didn't they? That's weird. Anyway, come on, cheer for the Flames, all right? Let's go, Alberta. Come on, let's win a Stanley Cup and shove it. Anyway, you know what I mean. I love the idea of this, okay? This is symbolic for me. But I want to talk about something real quick. I said resiliency comes from stumbling. I need you to hear this. I've been talking about this ever since I started speaking. I can do all of these things with my feet, not because I'm magical, but because from the first memory that I have. Do you have a first memory? Do you have one in your head? Just think about it right now. What's the first photographic image that comes into your head, hopefully not a negative one, of when you were really little? This one hits in my head all the time. Sitting in my basement next to my mom's old Singer treadle sewing machine, to use with her foot. She made clothes, hem dresses, pants, fixed socks, all that stuff. They were so good at that, eh? And she would sit down there for hours, and I got bored. So I would sit next to her sewing. She gave me a pile of buttons one day and a rag about this big, and a needle and some thread. Say, thread the needle and sew the buttons. You ever try threading a needle? Try doing it with your toes. Okay? And then sewing buttons on rags. And then when I was done, she'd cut them off and say, start over. I'd do that for hours at a time. My dad was a mechanic, right? He'd bring home nuts and bolts from work. Little tiny ones, all the way to big heavy ones. And I would screw them on and off and on and off for hours at a time. Why? So someday I could be a motivational speaker and go out and dazzle people? No. Because mom and dad knew nobody was going to pave the way for me. It's like I had to build my own road. Does that make sense? So when we build the road for our children, what are we doing for them? I know we love them. My parents loved me too. I had to make my bed every morning before school. Do you make your kids make their beds? I had to pick up my toys every night before bed. I had to vacuum the carpet 3 times a week with my foot because mother loved neatness. You know what's really funny? When I met my wife, Darlene, we were both divorced. In fact, I had another deja vu moment today. We met at the hotel down on Gateway. They changed the name of the hotel. I can't believe it. It used to be called the Cedar Park Inn. Remember the Cedar Park Inn? That's where I met my wife, at a conference. I was the speaker and she was the coordinator of the event. And we hit it off. And it just, fast, man, fast. I had a child. I was a single dad. My first wife had mental health breakdown, so I became a dad on my own. That was hard. And then I met Darlene. Oh my God, she's incredible. You know what she also is? Real quick. She's a feng shui master. Do you know what a feng shui master does? You know what feng shui is? This beautiful building is very feng shui. Okay, lots of glass, Lots of nice features. In our house, we have a waterfall at our front of our house. We have this huge Buddha sitting on our front step. People think we're Buddhists. No, it's just a nice Buddha. We have Bagua mirrors reflecting negative energy from our front and back doors. We have rocks in our bathroom sinks. You're looking at me funny. Me too. I don't understand it. People go, why do you have rocks in your sink? It's a feng shui. Don't ask. All I know is you can actually create nature's energy inside, right? That's why they have all those things, the rock shows and gem shows and all these things. Do you believe in this stuff? I do now. I didn't before. I thought it was what I call woo-woo. But my wife says you can measure energy. She got these rods. She sticks them, people come into our house and go, let me test you. So she'll put them over here and she'll do the rods and she'll start moving towards them, and as soon as they open, she can feel their energy. And she'll say, think of something negative. And she has to go back because the power of negative energy outweighs the power of positive energy by 3 to 1. That's why there's so much anger, because it radiates. But you see, I'm not going to fall into that trap. Can you feel my energy? It's pretty positive, isn't it? You think it's contrived? Think what you want. This positive energy has made my life what it is. And when I realized where I got it from Hilda Law. She didn't call it feng shui. She called it picking your attitude. Because we do get to pick it, don't we? Even though maybe some of it's a bit hard. I understand. That's why the piano is symbolic for me. Okay? So, first time I played that song, my mom loved to play bridge. Mom and Dad loved bridge. We were over at a friend's house. They were playing bridge. They sent me to the basement to go do something. So Mom heard me downstairs putzing around, and then I played that little song, and then she heard me play, and she came racing down to the basement. Was that you? I gave the standard 10-year-old answer, do you see anybody else down here? And then she made me play it again. And then she took me on the Yorkton, Saskatchewan elderly women's tea party circuit. It was the best gig I've ever had. Thanks for inviting me to your series, but my God, those gigs, oh my God, those women, there's grandmas in the room, isn't there? Oh, I like grandpas, but grandmas, there's something about you, isn't there? You have such a low bar for your grandchildren, don't you? You really do. You don't have the same bar you had for your children. Don't you know that? These women were amazing. I'd play that dumb little song, and they would cry. And they'd give me milk and cookies. And they'd kiss my forehead and leave a lipstick stain for like a week. I still wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat and the smell of Chanel No. 5. Remember that stuff? It was toxic. These women made me feel like I could do anything. One day I went into a lady's kitchen, and instead of milk and cookies, she said, show me your foot. I love my feet. These are my hands. It's quite fascinating to me when I met Darlene, because she was also divorced from an RCMP officer, okay, just so you know. He was a fine police officer, but he had the same kind of challenges that so many of our first responders have. Do you know one of the things that's going to make me feel real uncomfortable on Saturday is not the memory of so much death in one spot. Have you been there, by the way? If you ever get a chance to go out to rural Saskatchewan, visit the memorial site. I was there in September because I was the first lecturer they brought in to speak to all of the first responders of that accident. Because that's one of my areas of expertise, is PTSD. See, you can't put a positive spin on PTSD because what caused it is never positive. But at the same time, we can't let these realities of the world drag us down. And that's what my wife reminds me about when understanding why she'll do whatever it takes to try to help people instill positive energy in every facet of their life so they can feel a belief that anything is possible. And I know that sounds cheesy, but I tell you, that's what drives me, and that song is a great representation. Not because the story ends well. That's exactly my point. The lady was a piano teacher, and my mother had asked me to get lessons from her. So we talked about it, and then the lady said, no, you can't play the piano. Look how short your toes are. In fact, I don't think you can play music. Really? So how did that happen? Let me tell you about my favorite leader, and then I'm going to be opening the floor to questions, okay? My favorite story. It's hard to pick, But this is my favorite story. About a year after the lady in the kitchen said I'd never play music, my mom gets a phone call that goes like this. I want you to imagine the phone call in real time. Hello, Mrs. Law. My name is Blaine McClary. I'm the band director for the Yorkton School Band program. Do you have a son named Alvin? Yes, we do. Does Alvin have a talent for music that you're aware of? Oh, he loves music. Why are you calling? Oh, Mrs. Law, all 11-year-olds in Yorkton have to take a music aptitude test, and your son got 96%. Wow! That is a good mark, Mrs. Law. That's why I'm calling. We would love to have your son join the school band. Are you following this call in your head in real time? And my mom's going, that sounds wonderful. I can't wait to tell him the good. He's at school right now. I know, that's why I'm calling you. Mrs. Law, I need your permission. You got it. Okay, good, let's do this. So what kind of instrument are you going to get him to play? Band director says he can pick any instrument he wants. Why don't you just bring him up to the school? You know, he can pick. Mom, what, that sounds awesome. But I got a really important question for you. Yeah. Have you met him? What? Have you met him? No, I don't know him. I just got his phone number here. I'm kind of going through a list, you know, calling the moms. Well, Mr. McClary, you should probably know, it's a good time to tell you that Alvin, Alvin sort of has no arms. You following this call in real time? Hello, you still there, Mr. McClary? Yeah, I'm still here. Really? Really, your son has no arms? No, I'm not kidding. He was born this way, sir, but why would that matter? Well, Mrs. Law, that's exactly what matters. How could we possibly put a kid in the band with no arms? I'm sorry, Mrs. Law, this was a big mistake. I apologize. I have nothing else to tell you. I'm really angry with myself right now for not knowing this. I hope I didn't offend you. Have a nice day. Click. Now, clearly, the story's not over, right? But don't get ahead of me. See, the trouble with our world, and we could talk about this all night because people love to complain, don't they? But let me just say this very succinctly and simply. There's no one formula for success. But I will agree with what the board said there earlier about what Peter Lougheed said. You can't get extraordinary leadership out of an ordinary effort, kind of what he said, right? So that's my point, is that I think what we all are missing in the bottom line of all of this is it takes everybody. And some of us will be leaders and some will not. That's our society. Some people are great followers, just the way it is. But what I believe it takes is vision. A clear vision of where we can be and where the world can be better than it was yesterday. So I walk in the house and my mom was beaming. She had a great smile, ugly teeth, great smile. She goes, Alvin, you're going to be in the band. What? School band. What? Yeah, wait till you hear this story. So we got in the car and we're driving to the school and she talks about this guy phoning 6 weeks earlier, how she told him I had no arms. And I said, why do you keep telling people that? Well, it's kind of an important thing to tell people, Alvin. She says, well, but you know what? When he hung up, I didn't want to tell you because I knew how hurt you'd be, but Alvin, he called back. This morning, he called back. They want you in the band. What am I going to play? I don't know. We'll find out. So I meet Mr. McClary. I don't know if you feel about me saying this, but most leaders, when you meet them, they just don't feel like leaders. You ever meet somebody? You had no idea who they were? So others that are really big, important people, they have all these people around them. Well, they must be important. Really. You know, all it takes is every kind of possible person out there will have their own take on this leadership idea, huh? But I think some of the best leaders are the ones you never expect, the ones you never think are going to come your way. When I met Mr. McClary, he just seemed like a regular guy. And then I met 2 more teachers at the high school. I love this. The woodworking teacher at the Yorkton Regional High School, his name was Mr. Wood. I just love saying that. So we went into the school, and I met all these teachers, and we went to the vocational wing. Again, older story. Remember when vocational wings of high schools were the only place for bad kids? Remember that? Yeah, really? What are the trades about? Anyway, the funny thing is we go to this wing of this school that I felt totally comfortable in because my dad was a service manager for a truck and tractor dealership. Blue-collar home. Can't beat that, can you? I don't think so. So I was familiar. I was comfortable. Went into this room where they taught construction. Saw this really funny-looking chair. This isn't the chair. But it was a wooden chair, and it had the right arm sawed off. And the left arm had a metal rod bolted to the side of the big clamp, welded on the top. And on the floor was a long black case. Mr. McClary sat me in the chair, opened up the case, took out, put together, and inserted in these 2 clamps a trombone. A trombone. And like a game show host, he goes, what do you think? Well, what do you think? I thought it was the dumbest looking thing I'd ever seen in my entire life. Can you move the slide with your foot? Yeah, I can do that. Wow, that's pretty cool. Can you make this noise? Okay, can you do it in the mouthpiece and move the slide? Well, this noise came out. 11-year-olds love noise. So I played a little bit, locked the slide. I sat there in absolute confusion. I had no idea what had just happened. See, I think some of the most significant moments in our lives happen without us even knowing it. But if we're paying attention, if we're watching the people around us, if we're looking at the world around us, if we're not spending countless wasted hours looking at these stupid things, because they really are not essential, are they? Really? How important do you think you are that you can't miss 10 minutes looking at this thing? It's funny, I was in LA, I told you, for a week. I was on a Thursday, I was morning news, LA, downtown, beautiful city, crazy city. And there's a story about a woman getting robbed outside the Staples Arena where the Kings play hockey. And this reporter's out in front of the Staples Arena, and she's got her cell phone in front of her face, and she says to the world on TV news, who of us doesn't walk around looking at our phones all the time, not paying attention? That's what happened to a lady who got robbed the other night because she was looking at her phone instead of watching for the assailant that was just about to come and rob her. And I'm thinking, okay, what'd you just say? Who of us doesn't walk around looking at their phones? What do you think that means? It means I'm constantly in a state of consciousness, constantly in a state of mindfulness, watching around me and paying attention. Like, for example, right now, I know that if I was supposed to be done at 7:30, I'm 7 minutes over. But I don't care. That's not arrogance. That's saying, I know what I'm doing. I didn't lose track of time. I want to be here with you. I'll get to Lloydminster whenever I get there. But why I'm telling you that is that's not arrogance either. That's confidence in knowing what I believe are the really most important things in the world to think about. And that's what leaders do. They don't think about themselves. They think about others first. They're constantly paying attention to what's going on around them. They look at you in the eye when you're having a conversation like you're the only person in the world right there at that moment. Is that not a leader? And more than anything, what kind of person goes, no arms, trombone? Who does that? What kind of crazy person does that? In 1978, I was the #1 ranked high school jazz trombone player in the country of Canada. That is a fact. Not the handicap band, the real one. I played lead chair trombone in Canada's National All-Star High School Jazz Band. Am I bragging? No. But isn't it interesting that one phone call that put me back on track came out of a mind that said, let's give this young man a chance. Why is that my favorite story? Because it's a real person's story. It's not a prime minister story or a president's story or a premier story. It is a human being that changed the life of a little boy who's gone on to speak in 5 continents to over 3 million people. That's not bragging either. That's saying that leadership is about knowing that every one of you can change your little square footage of your world. And if you play your cards right, maybe you too can someday get a lecture at the Lougheed Lecture Series. Hey, what a thought. Think I dreamed this when I was in Mr. Sherwin's office? I don't think so. So there's no dramatic ending. You saw the drum, saw the piano. Now I'm going to just give it up to you for a little while here. If you have any questions, any comments, we're going to have microphones available if you need to talk. And then we'll kind of wrap this up shortly. Thanks for coming tonight, by the way. I really do appreciate it. Give me a shout. Fast that went by. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thanks. And if you do have to go, I won't be offended. You know, seriously, I won't be offended if you have to leave. It's okay. I talk to kindergarten kids. You know what kindergarten kids, when you speak in front of them, do? They pull their arms inside their shirts and they look up at the stage and go, to be ready for every kind of rude. Okay, any questions? Anyone at all? We're gonna...
This is the catch box. This is the mic. All you have to do is speak in it, and I'll throw it at you. It's foamy. You don't have to worry about getting hit.
Isn't this cool?
Yeah. Here, we'll try it. Ready? Get the catch position. That was an excellent attempt. Let's try again.
Hello. Hello.
Cool. What's your question?
I don't really have a question.
You don't have a question. We're just testing the mic. Okay, that's cool too.
Well, I play flute in the band.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Cool.
There you go. Throw it back.
Toss it back. This is the
Who
coolest
has
thing
the
ever.
next
isn't it?
question?
Anybody at all?
Okay, ready?
Way in the back.
Assume the
You're not
catch
gonna.
position.
Are you
in this
actually going to
row.
throw that
Yeah,
far?
well, no, it's going to go to this guy in the yellow jacket that put his hands up. Ready?
Oh, that was close. Now we're going to toss it to the next guy.
No, whip it up. Whip it up.
Sweet. Nice.
Hello.
Hello.
So when someone stumbles, let's say that it's a colleague or even someone that we respect a lot, what would you recommend us to do to help them stand up and to be, supportive of them?
So I think if you understood what I understood the question to be, when someone you know stumbles, how do you approach something like that? I would suggest to you that this is where getting to know each other, getting to have a relationship, getting to go past just the 9 to 5, if we can use that metaphor, and really getting to know what people are like. In fact, I think that's the trouble is with this discussion that we have had in our public discourse about mental health. We all like to put on a good face about it. Yeah, I support mental health. But really, do you? Are you comfortable talking about it? Because it's not a comfortable subject. But what I think that's where we need to have better relationships at work, better relationships in our neighborhood, get to know people a little bit better. That's not exactly the right answer for you, sir. But what I would also suggest is that we all stumble. So that's what I think happens when we get these relationships going with people. But more than anything, I think what we've learned, and by the way, I'm not anti-politically correct. You need to know that. I think we had to switch some stuff. But I think in our politically correct world, it's why good leaders and good managers have regular meetings with their people. And by the way, I can tell you this as a really great factoid. One of the things that has brought me a lot of success in Europe in particular is working with executive management organizations. So these organizations that put on they're different formats, but a lot of them are like mastermind groups. So you've got 15 or 20 CEOs or CFOs or COOs all, gathering in these little clubs. They're almost like clubs. I work in England all the time. And what it does is it allows people to get into an insulated environment where they can share their personal stuff with others with a degree of confidentiality. I love the idea of that model in the workplace. So not that we have to open up our entire lives to everybody at work, but I think that is some place where sometimes we will tell people things that we won't even tell the person that we might be married to. So, and again, I will say this, we all stumble. And by the way, I was not suggesting that we just get over what's going on in Alberta. That's the trouble, is there's no just getting over it. And I think that's why a lot of people are stressed right now, so it makes sense that we need to have these conversations. Yeah. Does that help at all? Right behind you, there's a lady. Oh, she's got that's a simpler microphone that won't hurt you.
Yeah. As a current MRU alum, and also an able-bodied person studying critical disability, I see your face already. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on combating the internalized and systemic ableism and disableism and how I can be a leader in that.
I think the problem with me and my attitude towards disability is some people that are a little more negative about their circumstance don't always like people like me. Have you heard an expression called the chosen ones? Is that familiar to you? Okay, so for those of you that don't know, it's kind of a derogatory term, but it's really evident in the world of disability. So people like me, Rick Hansen is another one, gets a lot of slag because he's so famous and went around the world in a wheelchair. So if Rick Hansen can go around the world in a wheelchair, why can't you? That kind of insult. By the way, let me add one more. Have you seen, I was going to show it to you tonight, but I knew I'd run out of time, so I chose not to. But if you want to see an amazing video, go to alvinlaw.com and check out there's a whole bunch of stuff. There's a 7-minute Change the Label one from Goalcast, but the one that I like even better is a 3-minute one that's called the Paralympics trailer from Channel 4 England. And you see a little woman in a swimsuit. So if you push play on there, you see a 3-minute video where I'm playing the drums in a band that was brought together from all over the planet to be the music behind the soundtrack behind the video that was promoting the 2016 Paralympics in Rio. That was a long sentence. But the fact is, it was a remarkable video. 137 people with different disabilities in that video, mostly Paralympians from Great Britain. And you know what we were called, what that video was called by a critic of the Ottawa Citizen, wrote an op-ed column calling people like me disability pornographers. Because they believe that what we represent is a totally disrespectful approach towards disability. And that's fine, because everyone's entitled to their opinion. But let's ask the question again. How does a guy without arms go to the bathroom by himself? Just think about it. So what I would suggest to you is that some people don't handle the emotional quotient of having a disability because it is hard, and it is challenging, and the world's not fair. But I think, to be quite blunt, it's not about the disability. It's about how the person has accepted their lot in life, because nothing's fair. You know, one of the great, you watch this happen in Canada, because that's where we live, you're going to see one of the biggest problems that nobody's talking about, the elephant in the room, and that is all of the seniors that are entering that age in our society that don't have a place to go to be taken care of. So that's another thing it's about. It's about special needs is not just a nice cutesy word. It's real, and it's very dark for some people. But what I would suggest is for having these people reevaluate how they do their energy. Because if you have a negative energy all the time, it does nothing to help with your health, with your disability. I mean, look at me. Do I look healthy? Because I don't work out. I don't watch my diet. I like to have a beer. I like to glass of wine. I like to party with my friends. But yet my energy keeps me healthy. I don't know how I do that. But that's what I would say is that the biggest health benefit for a person with severe handicaps, I'm going to say it, positive attitude. I don't know if that answers your question, but it was my best shot. Okay, thanks. Yes, sir. Microphone coming.
Thanks for your talk. I really appreciated everything you shared.
Thanks.
I was wondering if you could talk a bit about, since you have experience with people with PTSD, how do you lead in a situation where a lot of the people you have to lead have experienced PTSD, a range of it?
So I think what we are doing with PTSD now is hopefully at least acknowledging that there's so much information. Don't look on the internet. Don't go looking at websites. Find actual mental health professionals who can properly assess what you're going through. Do you know what's an interesting fact that I've learned about PTSD? This is just an arbitrary number. I don't know if there's an actual statistic. But from working with so many of these groups, what I'm fascinated by is it's a very small percentage of people who get PTSD can't handle it. But that's a fact, and that's the ones that we have to worry about because it's real. We hear of people taking their own lives because of the pressure of what they see in their heads and what happened to them in their lives. I wish I could understand that, but if I was to take a really deep philosophical approach to it, I would say this. The irony of PTSD is most people that get it are people that wanted to help. So they suck at asking for it. That's what I would suggest is the biggest thing. We need to allow this opportunity as we spread the word, as we get more awareness, as we get more education, that we make it so that it's not a stigma. You have to understand, even in the military is the worst place, policing in particular, because they don't want to appear as weak, and they don't want to stigmatize themselves in the culture of their organization. It's a little different in other services. In EMS, quite a different reaction to emergency first responders who are healthcare professionals, because that seems to be a bit of a tighter group. Some of the macho is still out there. And I think that's part of what we have to do in terms of this open dialogue. But you know, more than anything, I just think the fact that people are now being able to say, okay, so I don't feel well, I had an incident, I'm not coping, I need to go talk to somebody. Maybe now, more than ever before in our history, those people won't be embarrassed. Because I can tell you, it's embarrassing when there's something you can't do. You know, how do I go to the bathroom? Well, I got special clothes, you can't tell. But it took me till I was 26 years old to learn to dress myself. You don't think that bugged me? But I surrounded myself with people that did not make me feel weakness by what I was weak for. So I hope that answers your question a little bit.
Yeah, it sounds to me like you said, if you're the leader of an environment where there's people with PTSD, create the space so that they can get healing support.
Also, just make it so that, make the objective of being a leader in your organization open lines of communication.
Okay.
I know that sounds like a really easy thing. It's not easy, but I think we know now. So if we sit in a meeting, for example, and we say, so acknowledging the fact that PTSD is a real thing, we need to accept the fact that some people in our little culture here are going to need to talk about it. So let's start teaching this, start educating ourselves about it. But more than anything, acknowledging that, sometimes maybe this wasn't the best thing for you to get into. I think that's the hardest part for a lot of people that I met with PTSD, is they get into these episodes where they just can't do what they dreamed of doing for their entire life. So they almost feel like they're letting their dream down too. But I would suggest that their mental health is way more important than the trophy. So I know that was kind of a shallow answer, but it's a very complicated topic, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. Anyone else? Oh, you got the box.
I got the box. 1976, I came within 10 feet of meeting you. It was, you were playing in the band. I was in a band competing with your band. And I really love to draw. And I felt that someone as talented as you definitely had to draw. And so my conversation with you was going to be focused on what you draw, what you like to draw, because I thought you were amazing. But unfortunately, there were some young men that cut in front of me and teased you, and you had to defend yourself.
Huh.
And so it was really interesting because I was very afraid at that time. I wasn't feeling very secure in who I was as a person. And so I never got to meet you. But I watched you compete with your trombone many times, and I was always impressed and fascinated, and I never forgot you. And I was so happy to come today to see you.
That's very nice of you to say that. Yeah. Do you know what I did by doing that? This is a very good comment. I don't know if you caught the subtlety of it. I've had a lot of people say to me, why don't you talk in schools about bullying? Because that's not my expertise. And by the way, when I said I have a PTSD expertise, that doesn't mean I'm the most knowledgeable person in the room. But I've been working with the field. I started working with a foundation out of Halifax called the Tema Conter Foundation. They're one of the leading researchers on PTSD. And I've been working with them now for 12 years. So I'm learning a lot, but nothing official. But I will suggest to you that the reason that I don't talk about bullying is I'm not an expert on it either. But what I will say is that even back then, I don't know what I did, but I was taught at a very early age, teach people how to treat you. You know what I mean? Like, just, I know that sounds really easy, but you do it. And I know it's hard for some people, because bullying's real. It is real. But can I just say something a little bit controversial? It's also exaggerated. Okay, the media would have you believe that 1 in 3 students goes to school scared. That's a lie. It's just a lie. 1 in 3 kids don't go to school scared. 1 in 10 maybe. But I'm just telling you, sometimes these statistics get skewed for other purposes, and you got to be very careful, because we do worry about our kids. How are they doing? I see them all the time. Okay, I talked to the school this morning, all 900 of them, just fine, thank you. Just saying. I know there's some challenges out there, but that's what I was taught. Teach them how to treat you. Thanks for sharing that. That was cool. I don't want to keep you too long here, folks. One last? Okay. Good catch. Good throw, too.
Thank you. I have one question. What do you do about the positive energy suckers that are around you?
What do I do about the positive?
The bullies at work and the negative Nellies at work.
This is the perfect way to end the evening about leadership, okay? I really believe that. I'm not just saying it because that was a great question, but I really mean this. Let me give you a very short anecdote. And if my wife was here right now, she'd be laughing, because she would say, you don't know any short anecdotes, Alvin. I promise I'll keep this simple. In 1988, my ex-wife went through a mental health meltdown. Okay? She threatened to kill me with a butcher knife 3 times. Sorry to be graphic, but this actually happened. So it's like I said to myself, I've got to save my life, and I've got to take my little boy. And I did that. Now, the long version of the story is very complicated because she got better, and then she got worse, and then she got better, and I'm not making fun of this. But it was almost as if my son and I were together, so I felt like it was okay. But part of my emotional baggage in this story was I didn't want my ex-wife to suffer. As much as I didn't like her, I wanted her to get help, but she wouldn't get help. No matter who I talked to her friends. They were blaming me for all of this. So eventually everything worked itself out. We got a divorce. But what I did the weekend that I moved out on my own with my son was I made 27 phone calls. I'll always remember the number on a Sunday afternoon to all of the people that my ex-wife and I were friends with, that we had met as a couple, that were not people that I'd known for that long, all right? Not my friends that I'd known ever since Yorkton days or university days, all these people that told me I was crazy to get involved with this gal, you know, who hasn't had one of those in their life at least once, right? Where you get into a relationship where you shake your head and go, what the heck was I thinking? But see, that's what exactly took place. And, you know, that's how the baby happened, frankly. This was not a planned child. So that was even making things more complicated. But when I sat on the phone and I made those phone calls, oh my God, I was the most hated person in that circle. But you know what it was all about? I needed to get myself out of that dark hole that her friendships were like. Because, you know, did you ever get around someone you're around 30 seconds, it was 25 seconds too long? Now, unless you're married to them or they're your parent, go away. Surround yourself not just with like-minded people. That's not what I'm talking about. But surround yourself. When I think of my friends, okay, when I think of the people that I love and know in my life, every one of them has one common trait. You know what that is? Me. Isn't it fascinating? And they can be movie stars or hockey players or football players or just the guy that delivers the mail. I know people from every sector of society, but they all have another thing in common. They love life. They love life. They love to engage in life. So unless you have no choice, I would say choose to be around people that make you feel good, not bad, about the person that you are. And like my wife had the courage to do, if they're married to you, you give them many opportunities, and then you say last chance, and then you call the shot. And sometimes divorce can be a terrible thing, but I gotta tell you, sometimes divorce can be an awesome thing because it gets you out of a negative cycle with somebody that is bringing down who you are. So that would be my answer. I mean, I know it sounds like I'm saying just be around people like me. No. You have to meet these people. They're all so different, but they all share this bond. And on that note, I think what you need to hear before I let you go is I simply want you to remember as you leave tonight that leadership, as I told you at the beginning, is something that we can grow, something that we need to expect from our leaders, and something that I guess we also have to accept when they don't always tell us what we want to hear. Because you know, at the end of the day, really, it's pretty simple, isn't it? Life is full of people that are always going to tell you who you'll never be, what you'll never accomplish. Sometimes they're right. You know the lady who told me my toes were too short to play music? Look how short they are. And I was 9 years old when she said that. But then one day at Mount Royal College, when I first got to study there, back to your question, when I got to Mount Royal, oh my God, I'm biased now, okay? I couldn't believe the people that I was meeting. Students wanting to better their lives. People moving to Calgary from all over Canada, wanting to just enjoy a wonderful city. And I'm with all these people, and I'm sitting there looking at the mountains out a window one day. The highest thing I ever saw before that was the UGG grain elevator in Yorkton. And I'm shaking my head going, how did this happen? I was born without arms. I wasn't supposed to have a life. My own family didn't want me. I wasn't supposed to go to school. I wasn't supposed to play in band. Sometimes you just have to tell people, want to bet? I don't want you to clap for this, okay? Because it's not really why I played it. As I was getting really emotional looking at those mountains, I turned around and just happened to spot a piano sitting outside the Conservatory of Music at Mount Royal, which today has one of the best conservatory of musics in the country. And I wrote that song. And it's called The Ode to the Old Bag Who Said My Toes Were Too Short. Ladies and gentlemen, I think leadership is really just about one last idea. Just be authentic. Just be genuine. Work on your character. Worry less about what you look like and more about what people remember. Because to me, that is the ultimate test of humanity. What do people say when you're not in the room? Well, I can tell you that you'd be amazed how easy you can fix that. Thank you very much to the people, just wait, to the people that invited me. I want to thank, in particular, Brandon. Where's Brandon? There he is, somewhere around here. He was my contact. He's up there. He was the one who did all this for me. To the staff, to the volunteers, and to the Peter Lougheed Lecture Series for somehow thinking in its infinite wisdom that Alvin Law would be a good person to bring. Well, I can't tell you what it means to me because, as I said at the beginning, I had great respect for Mr. Lougheed, so to be associated with his name even for an hour or two in one evening is truly an honor, as it is to be at one of the greatest academic institutions, honestly, on planet Earth. Thanks for having me here. It's been an honor. Thank you. Thank you. Good job. Thanks again. Enjoy your evening. Oh, one more thing. Go Flames. Go No, okay, maybe not.